My name is Charlotte Thalmay, and I'm going to be your guide on this tour today, on this virtual 1-hour tour, which we are live streaming to you straight from Copenhagen. This is going to be a little taste of a Jewish tour of Copenhagen, because usually our tours here are a little longer, at least 3 hours. So on this 1-hour tour, it's going to be the highlights and just a little taste of many of the different stories that there are to tell. So this very synagogue that you're standing in front, sitting in front maybe, is from 1833. It is the main synagogue of Copenhagen. We do have 4 different Jewish communities. This is the largest, the oldest. It's Orthodox. It means that ladies are sitting upstairs, men are sitting downstairs. All prayers are in Hebrew, as it is in an Orthodox synagogue. We don't have female rabbis. We have a Reformed Jewish community. They have female rabbis. We have a Chabad community in Denmark, like everywhere else, I was just about to say, and they are marvelous in Denmark. I'm a big fan of Chabad, Lubavitch. They do a very good job. And then we have a very small and very ultra-Orthodox Jewish community as well. So there's no excuse not to live a Jewish life in Denmark, even with a small Jewish community between 6,000 and 7,000, almost all living in Copenhagen. So we are going to stand right here in front of the sign. It says that Dan Uzan, 37 years old, was killed right here where I'm standing now. Now, what happened on the 15th of February 2015 was that there was a crazy, brainwashed Muslim young man born and raised in Denmark who wanted to copy what happened in Paris a few weeks earlier on. If you remember Charles Hebdo and the kosher supermarket outside of Paris, this was all about freedom of speech. It was all about the Jews. So in this situation, you had a man who first went for freedom of speech. There was a meeting in Copenhagen on the 14th, and he managed to kill one man called Finn Nørgaard, and he also managed to escape from the police. Later that night, and it later became the 15th after midnight, he turned up right here. He saw on the internet that there was a party. There was a bat mitzvah, a confirmation of a young girl called Hannah, very good friends of ours, and their daughter had her bat mitzvah party in the JCC behind the synagogue over here. So he planned to climb the fence, walk in, and he had a lot of weapons with him, but Dan Uzan stopped him, so he never got any further. But Dan lost his life. So not only the Jewish community was in shock, but also the Danish society as such. And our Prime Minister, the Danish Queen, went out and they were raising their voices and saying, we don't accept that one minority is harassing another minority. And they put flowers. I don't know if Ronen, my husband here, your cameraman, he can show you the street. But you have to imagine that from one side to the other, it was a sea of flowers. Millions of flowers it must have been. You couldn't walk through an estate like that for weeks. Besides the military and the police, we also have our own security team, young and older for that matter, men and women from the Jewish community. One of them is my son, and he came to me like a year ago and he said, Mom, they're asking me from the Jewish community if I would like to help out and be a part of the security corps. And if you can imagine, the Jewish mother's heart split into 2 pieces. One was like, I'm a proud Jewish mother, my son is responsible, he's brave, he's willing to do what it takes. The other half was like, oh no, you can die from this is dangerous. I want to tell you the story about the Torah Scrolls that we had in the synagogue where we just came from. Because what happened was that in 1943, most of the Jews were gone. I'm going to tell you where they were, just in short, in a second. But you got to understand that the priest in here, Christian Petersen, together with the mayor of social affairs of Copenhagen, the 2 of them were afraid. Now that the Jews are not around to protect their Torah scrolls inside of the synagogue, what is going to happen if the Nazis are coming in there, destroying them, stealing them, as they had seen happening around Europe during World War II, in the beginning of the war. So they got hold of an ambulance, actually 2 ambulances, and they were hiding all our Torah Scrolls. They took them out, and they were bringing them over here to this church. And Christian Petersen, the minister of the church, he placed them down in the crypt underneath the altar, and there he was protecting them for nearly 2 years with his life. And finally, when the war ended in 1945 and they could be returned to the Jewish community when they got back to Denmark, he delivered them back, of course. And he was honored by the Danish Jewish community. He, in fact, got 2 crowns from the Torah Scrolls, 2 silver crowns on a nice plate where it was written, "Thank you so much and for what you did." It was a wonderful mitzvah, and we had a lot of mitzvahs like that. But let me just say that the highlights are all about that in 1943, when the Nazis are deciding to come after the Danish Jews, you have all the people of Denmark standing up, fishermen, people from the resistance, the man on the street, even the king of Denmark. Many people went out of their way to save the Jews. How could they be saved? Because Sweden was neutral. This is the main point. We had a country, a neighbor country not so far away, just divided with Denmark with a body of water called Andersen, and you needed to ship them over to the other side. So in the middle of the night, in the beginning of October 1943, nearly all the 7,000 Danish Jews were being brought to the coast of Sweden. Sweden did take them in, and nearly for 2 years the Danish Jews lived in Sweden, and they returned afterwards. One of the very heroic stories and unique stories that I've picked for you today is that many of the Danish Jews were taken out to a hospital called Bispebjerg, because how did they know that this was time? Well, actually, they went to the synagogue for the Shabbat service just right before Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and our rabbi back then could address his congregation and say, "Shana Tova, coming up, but you know what? We have to cancel this service. You got to go home, spread the news. We know from very reliable sources that the Nazis are now coming after us. It's our turn. We got to get out of here." So where do you go? People started hiding in different homes of non-Jewish friends and neighbors. Some of them slept in parks overnight. And a big crowd, nearly 2,000 during those few days in October 43, in the beginning of the month, went through this hospital called Bispebjerg. They, first of all, had their names taken away so that they couldn't be hospitalized like patients, being called Rosenbaum and Cohen and DeLavis and whatever Schwartz the names were. So they became Hansens and Jensens and Andersens and whatever the Danish names were. And then they got a white shirt on, as if you were a real patient, lying there in a bed with your diseases at the end written, like you had a kidney stone or blood test had to be made or whatever it was. So there they were, and slowly they were being helped from there by people from the Danish resistance, the Danish brave people who brought the Jews out to the different fishing villages and eventually on fishing boats and then to the coast of Sweden. But at a certain time, one night when there were around 200 Danish Jews at the hospital, the Nazis got the feeling there's something fishy here. I think a lot of Jews are hidden here, the commander said. And then they started making a circle around the hospital. Now, they realized, the doctors and everybody in there, now the Nazis are going to come for all the Jews. What do? We have to come up with something in seconds. So someone, a nurse, came up with a brilliant idea. Let's pretend that we are going for a funeral. And the nurses, they lived on the premises. So they went to their homes, took everything they had that was black, borrowed from all other patients, doctors, whoever was around. Black clothes was being put on all these 200 Jews. They were all being stuffed into different kinds of ambulances, taxis, lorries, cars, and they were lining up in front of the gate from where the Nazis were holding their hands and trying to get in any second. Then they were knocking on the gate, and the Nazis, as correct as they are, they opened up, and one of the doctors said, "Sorry, but we have a funeral. This is a procession. Could you please step aside?" So they did. They stepped aside and they could all leave and go to the funeral. They got away from it. So there are many wonderful stories and mitzvot, good deeds that took place during those years. Now let me tell you the story about Hans Christian Andersen, because he had very tight connections to the Danish Jews. But here's another Danish man who was involved in the Second World War, being Jewish. Some of you might have heard of him. If you're looking at him or the name underneath, you'll see that it says that his name is Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr was a scientist. He was a brilliant mind. He was the person who found out how you can split the atom. And for that he got the Nobel Prize. Now, in 1943, the American government was asking Mr. Bohr here, being Jewish, being a brilliant scientist, being Danish, could you please come and help us out? The Manhattan Project needed him in the Manhattan Project in New Mexico. And many of the brilliant minds that they invited to join that project came from Europe, and many of them were Jewish. And so was Mr. Bohr here, and he did join the Manhattan Project, but he also went to Sweden before he went straight to the US. So he spoke to the King of Sweden, he spoke to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Sweden, and he said, I'm Danish, I'm Jewish, I'm on my way out of here. I didn't say where to, it was of course a secret project. So he said, maybe you should consider, you Swedes here, consider opening up the borders for the Danish Jews. They might need it pretty soon. So he kind of paved the way a bit and had his impact on the decision that Sweden ended up deciding that they took the Danish Jews. The story about Einstein is a cute story that Einstein came to Copenhagen to visit Niels Bohr. And, you know, they were kind of nerds, both of them, really, really into their business and so clever, so smart. So one day they were sitting in a tramp in Copenhagen, and at a certain point, the driver, he got up, he went all the way to the back seat where the two of them were sitting, and then he was saying to both Einstein and Bohr, what are you doing? Why are you sitting there? You have been coming from one end to another now 4 times. Are you never supposed to get off? So they had forgotten everything about time and place and were so much into their conversation. But there is a reason why we are back again and ending up the tour. As I told you in the very beginning, there's a very important story to tell right here. It is the story of Torah, Rosa, and Bejle. But not only the 3 ladies here, all of them lived at the old age home, which was behind the Jewish community, or where the Jewish community is today, right behind the synagogue. The Stumbling Stone project is going back to 1992. It was a German artist who decided to make the largest decentralized monument around the world. Victims of the Nazis, not only Jews, but most of them are Jews after all. Now, almost 80,000 of these stones are placed around the world, most of them, of course, in Europe. 26 countries, and finally last year Denmark came on that map with the first 12 stumbling stones. One of those 12 stumbling stones was for my grandfather. I'm on that committee, and this year we are going to have another 20 of the stumbling stones that we are going to put in places where these Jews lived.